If you are over 60 and your knees catch every time you stand up from a chair, what I am about to tell you in the next 10 minutes is going to explain something your doctor has almost certainly never mentioned to you. There is a hidden reason your knees are wearing down faster after 60 than they did at 50, and it has almost nothing to do with your knees themselves. It is happening in your belly. And by the end of this video, you will know the 5 foods that begin to reverse it and the one final piece your body simply cannot make on its own anymore after a certain age. My name is Mother Mary Beckford. For over 55 years, I have served my people as a bush healer, and the knowledge I carry was passed to me by my grandmother, a beloved midwife in the hills above Port Antonio, and by her mother before her up in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. My grandmother used to say, "Every sickness start in the belly, my child." The old ones knew this long before any laboratory could prove it. Today, the researchers are finally catching up, and what they are finding is going to surprise you. Here is the part nobody tells you. By the time you are 60, you have already lost roughly half of the beneficial bacteria you carried in your gut at age 30. Half. Gone. And those bacteria were doing something specific that almost no one talks about. They were producing the compounds that calm the inflammation in your joints, not in your stomach, in your knees. So when the bacteria fall, the inflammation rises and the cartilage in your knees starts wearing down faster than your body can repair it. That is the hidden engine. That is why the same person who walked 5 miles a day at 50 is now bracing both hands on the kitchen table to stand up at 65. It is not just your knees getting older, it is your gut going quiet. Now stay with me, my child, because this changes everything about how you eat for your knees. The 5 foods I am going to teach you are the foundation. They will carry you most of the way home. They feed the good bacteria you have left, they bring in the raw materials your cartilage needs, and they cool the inflammation down. But there is one final piece, the piece your body can no longer make on its own past a certain age, and I will explain that piece toward the end of this teaching. I do not believe in burying good information from our elders. We are going to count down, number 5 down to number 1. The most powerful food comes last. And there is one food on this list that surprises 9 out of 10 folks who hear it from me, because most people have it in their kitchen right now and have no idea what it does for a tired knee. Number 5 is bone broth. Now, I know some of you young ones think bone broth is a new fashion the city grocery stores invented. My people, please. My grandmother had a pot of bones simmering on the back of her coal stove from sunrise until evening, every single day of her life. She called it the marrow water, and the Creator put healing in every drop. Here is what is happening inside that pot. When you simmer bones for hours, you draw out the collagen, the protein that builds the cushion between your bones. After 60, your body makes about 1/3 less of its own collagen than it did at 30, 1/3 less raw material every single day. So if you do not bring it in through food, your knees are working with less and less to repair themselves. A woman from my community, Miss Pauline from Spanish Town, came to me at 68 years old. She had cooked for a primary school for 35 years, and her knees were so stiff in the mornings she could not bend down to feed her old dog. I taught her to simmer chicken bones overnight in a slow pot with a little vinegar to draw the minerals out. She drank 1 mug each morning. By 12 weeks, her morning stiffness had reduced by about 60%. But here is what is interesting. She came back to me and said, "Mother Mary, my knees are better, but they are not all the way home. There is a stubborn last piece that the broth cannot reach." I told her, "Daughter, that is not a fault in the broth. That is a sign we are now in the territory food alone cannot fix. We will come back to Miss Pauline in a few minutes. Here is exactly how to do it. Take chicken bones, beef bones, or fish bones. Cover with water. Add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Simmer on the lowest setting for at least 8 hours, 12 is better. Drink 1 mug in the morning, hot with a pinch of salt before any coffee or tea. But bone broth alone is not enough, because there is a fish that does something the broth cannot do, and it is a fish my grandmother used to soak in cool spring water before sunrise. Number 4 is fatty fish, and I am talking specifically about sardines and mackerel. Do not turn up your nose at me, my child. I know some of you do not like the smell. But what these little fish carry inside them is something your knees are starving for. Sardines and mackerel are full of omega-3 fatty acids, and inside the body, those omega-3s calm the chemical signals that drive inflammation. Imagine your joints have a small fire smoldering in them all day. The omega-3s are the cool water that keeps the flame from spreading. Here is the aging reality. The chronic, low-level inflammation that eats away at cartilage rises by about 40% in folks over 60. 40% more fire every day, year after year. That is what is grinding your knees down while you sleep, and most people have no idea it is happening. Buy canned sardines packed in olive oil or water, not soybean oil. Eat one small can 2 or 3 times a week. Mash them on hard dough bread with a squeeze of lime. Crumble them into a salad or eat them straight from the tin the way my grandmother did. If you are on blood thinners or your blood pressure is high, please speak to your doctor first. Now, there is a leafy green that even my grandmother in the Blue Mountains called the silent worker of the kitchen. Most folks pass right by it in the market, and they have no idea what it does for an aching knee. And before you say, oh, I already know about my greens, hear me out. There is something specific happening here that has nothing to do with what you learned in school. Number 3 is dark leafy greens: callaloo, kale, collards, pak choi, spinach. The greens our grandmothers cooked down in big iron pots with a little salt fish or smoked meat. Here is what nobody tells you. Dark leafy greens are full of vitamin K1, and vitamin K is the messenger of your body. It carries the calcium to the right address. Without enough of it, the calcium you eat does not end up in your bones and cartilage. It can end up in your arteries instead. Studies show that folks over 65 with low vitamin K levels have a much higher rate of cartilage thinning, and many of our elders are walking around quietly deficient and have no idea. Cook a pot of callaloo or kale at least 3 times a week. Use coconut oil or olive oil, onion, and garlic. Cook them down until tender but not gray. The fat is what lets the vitamin K absorb. Greens eaten dry do not work the same way. And squeeze fresh lime over them before eating, because the vitamin C helps your body lay down new collagen, which is exactly what we said about the bone broth. Now you see how the creator weaves these foods together. Now, I want to say something here because I see hands going up. Some of you are doing this already. You are eating the broth, the fish, the greens, and your knees still hurt. Stay with me, my people. There is a reason, and I'm going to explain it. But first, the next 2 foods, because the picture is not yet complete. Number 2 is fresh pineapple, and specifically fresh, not the tin kind in syrup. The Jamaican grandmothers used to slice pineapple into a wooden bowl every afternoon, and folks would come by and eat it while they sat in the shade of the breadfruit tree. They were not eating it just because it was sweet. They were eating it for their hips and their knees. Pineapple carries an enzyme called bromelain. Imagine bromelain like a cleaning crew that walks into a swollen joint and starts hauling out the rubbish. The swelling goes down, the pressure on the nerves eases, the knee can move again. By the time you are 70, the small spaces inside your knee joint are holding on to more inflammatory fluid than they should, and the body has lost some of its ability to clear that fluid out properly. Bromelain helps speed up the cleaning. A man from my community, Brother Winston from Montego Bay, came to me at 71 years old. He had worked the docks for 40 years, and his right knee was so swollen by evening that he could not put pressure on it to walk to the bathroom in the night. I told him to eat a half cup of fresh pineapple every afternoon between meals on an empty stomach. After 10 weeks, his evening swelling had reduced by about 50%. But he said the same thing Miss Pauline said. Mother Mary, this is wonderful, but there is still a stubborn last piece that will not lift. I told Brother Winston what I told Miss Pauline. We are now standing at the edge of what food alone can do, and the next step is not another food. It is something different. We will get there. Eat a half cup of fresh pineapple between meals on an empty stomach 4 or 5 times a week. If you are on blood thinners, speak to your doctor first, because bromelain has a mild blood thinning effect. Now, my people, we arrive at the most important part, the master food, the one my grandmother put in almost everything she ever cooked: the one I have been waiting to share with you. Number one is turmeric, the golden root. Up in the Blue Mountains, my grandmother kept turmeric root in a small wooden box on a shelf above her stove. She grated it into stews. She stirred it into warm goat's milk in the evening. She made a paste with it for swollen joints. And in 5 generations of our women, my grandmother lived to 89, my mother to 86, my aunties into their 80s and 90s, walking on their own legs to the very end. The Creator and Mother Nature working together. Turmeric carries a yellow pigment called curcumin. Imagine curcumin walking into a room where the inflammation alarm is screaming and quietly reaching up and turning the alarm off. That is what it does day after day when you eat it consistently. The chronic inflammatory load in the body roughly doubles between the ages of 40 and 70. Doubles. Curcumin works against that rising tide every single day. A woman from my community, Sister Doreen from Mandeville, came to me at 74 years old. She was a seamstress, and her knees had grown so painful she could not kneel to pin a hem on a long dress. I taught her to add a half teaspoon of turmeric powder to her morning porridge with black pepper and a little coconut oil every single day. After 14 weeks, her pain had reduced by about 55%, and she knelt on the floor for the first time in 7 years to pin the hem of her granddaughter's wedding gown. But Sister Doreen told me the same thing my other people had been telling me. There was still a stubborn final piece that would not lift, no matter how careful her eating was. And I want you to hear this clearly, my child. This was not a failure of the foods. The foods had carried her about 80% of the way home. The last 20% was sitting somewhere else entirely, and that is what I had to go find. Use 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric powder each day, every day. Mix it with a pinch of black pepper because black pepper increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%, and a healthy fat like coconut oil because curcumin needs fat to ride into your bloodstream. If you are on blood thinners or you have gallstones, speak to your doctor first. Now, I have to tell you what I learned over those next 2 years because this is the part that matters most. I had person after person like Miss Pauline, like Brother Winston, like Sister Doreen, doing everything right, eating the broth, the fish, the greens, the pineapple, the turmeric every single day, and every one of them hit a wall at about 80% better. Not 100, not all the way home. There was a stubborn last piece, and I could not understand why. So I went back to my grandmother's teachings, and I went back to the laboratories, and I read everything I could find, and I asked the bush healers I trust, and what I found was this. After 60, your gut has lost roughly half of the beneficial bacteria it carried at 30. The bacteria that produce the postbiotic compounds that quiet the inflammation in your joints. And here is the part that hit me hardest. Even when you eat all the right foods, if you do not have the bacteria living in your gut to ferment those foods properly, the foods cannot finish the work. The broth, the fish, the greens, the pineapple, the turmeric, they are giving your body the raw materials. But after a certain age, the factory that turns those raw materials into joint calming compounds is running at half speed, and food alone cannot rebuild it. That is the missing 20%. So I went searching. I tried the probiotics on the pharmacy shelf, and most of them are just one piece of a 3-piece puzzle. My grandmother used to say, you cannot grow a garden with just seed, my child. You need the seed, you need the soil to feed the seed, and you need the fruit the seed produces. In gut language, that is probiotic, prebiotic, and postbiotic, all three. Almost nothing on the market gives you all three together, and most pills sit in the stomach acid and never reach where they need to go. What I finally landed on after 2 years of searching is something called BoochBod. It is a kombucha gummy, not a pill, because so many of our elders cannot swallow capsules anymore, and I am tired of watching folks struggle with that. Inside it, you get the prebiotic fiber that feeds the bacteria. You get a clinically studied probiotic strain called lactospore, and you get the postbiotic compound called postbiotics LM1004, which is the actual joint calming compound your gut was making for you for free until about 60. You also get dandelion root and slippery elm, the same dandelion root my grandmother dug from the hillsides every spring after the rains. I went back to Miss Pauline and Brother Winston and Sister Doreen and put them on it alongside the foods, not instead of alongside. Within 12 weeks, every one of them said the stubborn last piece had finally lifted. Sister Doreen told me she had not slept through the night without knee pain in 4 years, and now she was sleeping straight through. Miss Pauline said she was kneeling in her kitchen garden for the first time in a decade. Over 30,000 of our folks are on it now. There is a 60-day guarantee, so if your body does not respond, you send it back and you pay nothing. The link is in the description right below this video. I want you to look at it before you finish your supper tonight because the bacteria in your gut do not wait for you to be ready. As always, my child, speak to your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you are on medication. Before I let you go, if this teaching has been useful to you, tap subscribe so I can keep coming back to you with more of what our grandmothers knew. And listen to me carefully now, my people, because this is not really about your knees. This is about the morning when your great grandbaby is 2 years old and learning to walk, and she stretches up her little hands toward you, and you can bend down and lift her without having to ask anyone for help. It is never too late. The body at 70, at 75, at 80 can still rebuild itself when it is given the right materials and the right bacteria. Your cartilage is alive. Your tissue is listening. The Creator did not design you to fall apart, my child. He designed you to be tended to the way a garden is tended to, with the right food and the right care. The 5 foods will carry you 80% of the way home. The last 20% is sitting in the description with a 60-day guarantee waiting for you. Tap that link. Walk gently, my people. I will see you in the next one.